Welcome to Game 8 Reviews.
Final Fantasy, the Tales series, Dragon Quest, and the Persona series are just a few games that popularized JRPGs. While it has been decades since the renaissance of this genre, there have been titles that kept the fire burning, and one of them is Xenoblade. Although considered a young franchise, Xenoblade continues the legacy of grand and emotional adventures across a vast world that JRPGs are well known for. Fans of the franchise are rallying across the battlefield with the release of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. With the buzz that this is probably the best in the series, we here at Game 8 Information Station are thrilled to sink our teeth into the latest of the Xenoblade saga. Alright, our hands are getting really twitchy, so let's get going and jump right in. Xenoblade 3 is a self-contained story that doesn't require its players to play the first two games to be enjoyed. In the world of Aionios, two warring factions, the Keves and Agnes, are in an endless battle to harvest each other's life essence. With that, soldiers are bred into a life of constant war, but a chance encounter between unlikely allies set the course of a grand adventure that would eventually alter the fabric of the world. Without spoiling anything, we do think that Xenoblade 3 told a compelling story. It discusses the ramifications of war amongst those affected, and how people can find purpose in a life that can be taken at a moment's notice. Like most JRPGs, Xenoblade 3 doesn't hold back when it comes to letting players know its main cast on a deeper level. And these guys go really deep. The main party members get to shine, especially Noah and Mio, as the main themes of the game revolve around the pair. Amongst a strong cast, Eunie stood out to us the most, as she had the most empowering journey from a foul-mouthed soldier
Then what you say it for, arsehole?
to an empathetic warrior. And these are just a few of the many times Xenoblade 3 puts as much effort into fleshing out its characters as much as it excels in creating a sense of scale. The story took a while to get going, which is a recurrent problem from the second game. The tutorial sections were weaved into critical story set pieces in an uninteresting manner, thus undermining the pace. Delayed gratification may have been the goal of the developers, but making early game enemies HP sponges made battles drag out too long. The game can be forgiven as it truly had a lot going on, which we will discuss later. Still, Xenoblade 3 would have benefited if these areas were more compact and applied more seamlessly into the story. The dialogue can be overwritten at times, as with most JRPGs. There is a usual tendency of, instead of providing a single line, the cutscenes are drawn out so much that players just contemplate pressing the skip button. While the game has its fair share of awesome surprises and plot twists, the story is brought down by predictable moments that are made worse by how the party dwells on it for too long when we've already figured it out 2 chapters ago. That being said, Xenoblade 3 doesn't do this as badly as its contemporaries, but it's nowhere as coherent as the first game in the series. Longtime fans will recognize some subtle nods to previous games and narrative decisions that give greater insight into the franchise as a whole. While it may not seem like it, Xenoblade 3 is actually a great entry point into the series.
See what we can really do?
Xenoblade Chronicles 3 follows the same formula that JRPGs have always had. It involves a great deal of exploring, collecting, and most of all, fighting. Aionios is an immense continent where players can explore and experience the story as it unfolds, and Monolith did a terrific job in building it. The map is truly massive, even bordering that of a traditional open-world game. Just when you think you're at the boundary of an area, there will be more to explore. Traversing in JRPGs tends to get boring with all the walking, but Xenoblade incorporated several traversal mechanics for us to journey through Aionios. The party can acquire skills that would make other areas more accessible, like climbing up vines, sliding down a wire, hiking up a steep slope, or walking on toxic swamps. This gives us more depth to exploring the vast game world created by Monolith. One of the best things that this game has to offer is its combat system. It makes significant improvements with the core mechanics of the first two games' role-based combat. Combat plays similarly to an MMO with an emphasis on controlling battle flow through tanks, healers, and attackers. Players are still capable of unleashing various arts and are encouraged to use them in accordance with the role their characters specialize in. Toppling enemies through art combos has also returned and has now been expanded to allow for different effects, such as burst combos and launches. Perhaps the most triumphant returning feature is this game's implementation of chain attacks, which are now more exciting than ever before. Chain attacks are unique segments that allow players to perform the party's arts in quick succession and culminate into a series of several attacks. It's an engaging minigame in its own right, and it comes with its own epic music. Chain attacks are definitely one of the best parts of the game's experience from both a mechanical and cinematic standpoint. Interlinking is Xenoblade 3's newest mechanic. It allows two of the party members to fuse into a single being that comes with its own set of powerful moves. There's a lot we can't say about this without spoiling, but let's just say it puts even more depth into an already packed combat system. Despite the immersive nature of the combat, it can be difficult to manage the party while fighting multiple enemies. Crowd control with tanks can be tricky due to the game's unintuitive targeting system. Still, the game does have its share of new quality of life features, like a slow motion indication that an enemy breaks aggro from a healer helps a lot, and a UI that makes it easy to make sense of all the chaos. Plus, the real-time adjustable camera has always been a big help in overseeing the combat. The biggest change is the game's improved customization system. The possibilities are endless as players are free to compose a team focused on offense, defense, or a perfect balance of both. This is made possible because players are now allowed to change the classes of the main cast. Players gain additional classes by completing hero quests, which not only leads to interesting side stories, but also grants a 7th party member that they can switch out. Tactically engaging combat, interlinking mechanics, deep customization options, and the most exciting chain attack system to date all culminate into what is arguably the best Xenoblade combat experience thus far.
Upon this sword,
Like its predecessors, the game boasts an expansive map. Our party journeys through green meadows, high-rise mountains, scorching deserts, calming seas, and even the underground. Each location is decked out with sophisticated detail that would put gamers in awe. With this being said, however, it is unfortunate that the limitation of the Switch cannot keep up with the level of detail incorporated by the developers. Xenoblade's draw distance is quite noticeable, reminding players of the graphical restrictions of the hardware. In contrast, it still does a better job than other titles like Rune Factory 5, yet it doesn't hide it as well as Breath of the Wild. Nonetheless, a game as vast as Xenoblade 3 deserves a whole lot of credit for what it's achieved. The cutscenes incorporated in the game are truly impressive as Monolith enlarged the scope and scale of every sequence. The fight scenes are dynamic, and the animation ebbed and flowed as if we were watching an episode of an anime. That being said though, there were some emotional scenes that felt stiff. When the narrative called for drama, we felt that the animation didn't really do much justice to it. Instead, we got wooden expressions that undercut the weight of some scenes. The cast of Xenoblade truly shines as the acting is phenomenal. The characters were brought to life with different personalities and quirks. They seemingly lean into anime archetypes, but with added dimension that makes them more well-rounded, making them all endearing. Xenoblade 3's musical track is simply amazing to no one's surprise, considering the reception the previous games had. The collective efforts of the game's composers blew us all away. Exploring sites was therapeutic, and combat is made more epic, and dramatic moments are heightened, making the experience livelier. There were a few moments, however, when the game's stellar soundtrack was awkwardly put, but for the most part, it was put to good use.
We can go all night!
Xenoblade Chronicles 3 promises a grand sense of scale both in narrative and gameplay. It stays true to the series' roots by expanding upon the mechanics that made the previous games engaging. But predictable plot points, overridden segments, and a few graphical hiccups make this game fall short of potentially being one of the greatest JRPGs of all time. However, Xenoblade 3 more than made up for it by including colorful characters with poignant subplots, an epic soundtrack, and engrossing gameplay that kept us hooked from start to finish, which is why we give this an 8 out of 10. What do you think about Xenoblade 3? Who's your favorite character and why is it Uni? Let us know in the comments below. Till then, this is Game 8 Information Station, signing off.